Bonjour, hi, my name is Jessica Auer, and I'm going to talk to you about my show, A New World, at Sporebol, where you will find photographs and a video project that I produced in Greenland. I took inspiration in this project from the history of the Vikings and their colonization of Greenland and their discovery, or the first discovery by Europeans, of the New World, which is North America. A lot of my research was inspired by the sagas. It was a literary tradition from Iceland that told the stories of the Viking travels to the New World, which they called Vinland, and has been currently defined as Newfoundland in Canada. So what we have here in the gallery is the last part of the research where I traveled to Greenland, and I met with a team of archaeologists that were doing a restoration of some ruined sites in 3 different villages in South Greenland. So behind me, what you have here is a large format image that gives you an idea of the process, the behind the scenes. It's the camping site where I stayed with the archaeologists at a place called Valsifjord, where we camped for almost a week while I filmed them doing the restoration. In the video, which runs for about 13 minutes, we look at how the archaeologists are working with stone. The stone ruins have been there since the beginning of the millennium, when the Vikings colonized Greenland. And the Norse people disappeared from that area around 1400 and left their ruins behind. So the archaeologists are working with this stone, of which is the best preserved ruins in Norse ruins in the world. However, the remains are quite subtle. And in that video, I'm looking at their relationship with the stone and the tools that they use to do the restoration. It is very slow and it's very contemplative. So documentary style, but in a way that allows the viewer to really reflect on the archaeological process. Accompanying the video in the space here, we also have some large format photographs that show how the stones were first appropriated from the mountains by the Norse explorers. So they would borrow the stones from the mountains to construct their buildings, which were like churches and barns and family dwellings. And later on, after they disappeared, and a new wave of colonization came to Greenland, South Greenland, and again, they were Scandinavian people, farmers. They appropriated the stones from the ruins in order to build new constructions. So again, churches and family homes and barns, but they were moved and created more contemporary style of architecture. And today we see the archaeologists going back to the site and then once again reappropriating stones, either from the mountains in their attempt to restore the original ruins. I'm also looking at a place in Greenland that is quite well known historically because it was the site or the farmstead that Eric the Red settled, and he's probably the one really well-known character from that time. So Eric the Red traveled from Iceland to colonize Greenland in around 985, and we believe he settled his farm at a place called Brattahlid. So in the exhibition, we also see photographs taken at this site that show the preservation of the ruins there, but also the interaction of the contemporary people who live in the village and the tourists that come and visit the site. So we see a cafe right next to a ruined site. We see a public artwork that was commissioned in the year 2000 to celebrate the discovery of the New World, the 1,000-year discovery. And we see tourists coming to see the site. So even though it is a place that is considered maybe remote to most people, it's Greenland between what I call the Old World and the New World, there is still an interest in the history of the site and the culture of Greenland there. The approach of using a documentary style for this exhibition is an important part of my work generally, but also something that I wanted to investigate in the context of looking at history and the way that history has been recorded, particularly in the sagas. For example, when we read the sagas, we can understand that there is many historical facts or events that are being retold, and therefore they've become important documents of their time. At the same time, the people who wrote them often wrote them about 200 to 300 years after the stories had been told. So they were based in an oral tradition that was later recorded in writing. Because of the passage of time and the subjective authorship of the sagas, they become in essence part documentary and part fiction. So I'm interested in how photography relates to this as a medium that shows us reality, but also is open to a high level of interpretation from the viewer and from the author. So it's one of the reasons why I'm working in a large scale, so that the viewer can feel like they become part of the site, they can spend time in front of the image, consider why the work is presented in a certain way, and getting back to the video itself and the long contemplative takes that we see. I'm giving time for the viewer to sort of reflect on this history and essentially ask a lot of questions that I deliberately leave unanswered. In that way, I think that a conversation can begin about not only how this history has been documented or the lack of documentation from this time, but also the role that documentary photography plays within the realm of contemporary art practices.